Welcome to the Tales of Deception YouTube channel, where we share intriguing stories and hidden aspects of family and social relationships. We hope that each story you experience with us will provide you with a fresh perspective on life, helping you better understand yourself and those around you. Stay tuned to our channel to explore perspectives that have never been shared before, stories that we often shy away from but can help us learn and grow. Today, I'd like to share with you a special story about Sophie, a woman who faces profound changes in her relationship. An unexpected incident at the gym causes her emotions and life decisions to shift drastically. Will this be an opportunity for Sophie to find her true path, or a turning point filled with conflict? Let's begin and dive into this story now.
My name is Sophie, and life has never been quite what I imagined. I got married young, had dreams, and everything seemed perfect. But over time, those dreams faded. And what was once passion slowly turned into routine. My husband and I were once madly in love, but now that spark has dimmed, and I feel that familiar ache of loneliness creeping into my life. I'm not proud to admit it, but there it is. I remember the first time I stepped into the gym. I was looking for a change, anything to remind myself that I was capable of more. At the time, I had no idea that I would meet someone who would challenge everything I thought I knew about myself, or that it would all begin with a simple conversation in the corner of the gym. I never thought a gym would become my place to escape, but here I was, standing on the edge of the treadmill, breathless from my latest run, and feeling more alive than I had in months. It wasn't the workout that did it, no, it was the feeling that maybe, just maybe, I was starting to rediscover myself. After all, it had been so long since I had truly focused on something other than the monotony of my life. The gym became my refuge. But something unexpected happened when I met Liam. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I had decided to change up my routine. As I walked past the free weights section, I noticed him. Liam, a young man, in his mid-20s, tall, athletic, with an intensity in his eyes that caught my attention. He wasn't the type to draw attention to himself, but there was something about the way he moved, how he seemed to be focused on his own workout. Yet there was always a quiet awareness when our paths crossed. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Just another face in the crowd, someone who would become part of the scenery. I didn't have time to think about men. Not now. My life was complicated enough. But over time, I couldn't help but notice him more and more. He was always there, just across the gym, working out as if he too was in search of something. And I started to realize that whenever I turned my head, he was often looking in my direction. Not staring, just a quick glance. Then his attention back to whatever he was doing. But it was enough to make my heart beat a little faster than usual. A few weeks passed, and we exchanged small pleasantries, a smile here, a nod there. I didn't know his name yet, but I could feel the shift when our eyes met. There was something unspoken, some quiet connection that seemed to build with every passing day. We hadn't said much to each other yet, but I felt like there was more happening between us than either of us was willing to admit. One evening, after finishing my set, I was stretching by the wall when I heard a voice behind me. "Hey, I'm Liam," he said, his voice friendly, almost casual. "I've seen you around a few times. You have a good routine." I turned to face him, a little surprised that he had come over to speak to me. I wasn't used to strangers talking to me, and especially not young men like him. He was in great shape. Younger than me, and undeniably attractive. "Thanks," I said, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. "I've been coming here for a while now. It's my way of staying sane, I guess." Liam smiled, a warm, easy smile that made him seem approachable. "I get it. Sometimes you just need a place to clear your head, right?" I nodded, suddenly aware of the space between us, the air hanging slightly thick with the weight of the conversation. From that moment on, we started talking more. At first, it was just small talk. What workouts worked for me, how long I had been coming to the gym, and whether I knew any good stretches. But slowly, the conversation started drifting into more personal territories, how I'd been feeling lately. The strain in my marriage, how lonely I had started to feel. I didn't intend to share these things with him, but there was something about Liam that made it easy. He didn't judge, he simply listened. And in a way, it made me feel like I was being seen again, something I hadn't felt in a long time. It was funny how something as simple as a conversation could stir up so many emotions. With every meeting, I felt myself opening up more, feeling drawn to Liam in ways I hadn't expected. At first, I told myself it was just a passing moment, after all. What did it mean to have someone listen to me really listen? But it wasn't just the listening. There was something more, something about the way he looked at me. The way he asked questions that made me feel understood. As time went on, I began to feel a connection that went beyond the gym. It wasn't about attraction at first, it was about feeling seen. I didn't know if Liam noticed the subtle shift, but I did. Every conversation seemed to leave me wanting more, and I began to feel a sense of anticipation before I came to the gym, wondering if today would be the day we'd speak again. One evening, after a particularly intense workout, I found myself lingering by the door, waiting for Liam. When he showed up, we decided to grab a smoothie together. The conversation flowed easily, as if we'd known each other for years. There was a calmness about him that I hadn't noticed before, and I found myself leaning in, listening intently to every word he said. I hadn't realized how much I craved this feeling, how much I wanted someone to talk to, someone who would make me feel special, even if only for a brief moment. And yet, as the evening wore on, a part of me felt conflicted. Was this just a fleeting connection? Would it fade once the gym routine was over? Or was this something more? Something that felt dangerous in its simplicity, yet felt so needed at the same time. When Liam walked me to my car that evening, I felt an odd sense of loss when we said goodbye. As I drove home, I realized I had already started to look forward to the next time we would meet, to the next conversation. But it was becoming clear that something had shifted within me, and I didn't know where it would lead. I had made it a habit to swim after every workout. The water always had a soothing effect on me, a therapy that helped ease the tension in both my body and mind. That day, after finishing an exhausting workout, I decided to spend some time by the pool to relax. The pool was quiet, with only a few people casually swimming. The air was cool, the water warm, and I could feel all the tightness in my muscles begin to melt away. I sank deeper into the water, allowing myself to forget everything else for a while. I swam a few laps, focusing on my breathing and the rhythm of my strokes, but then suddenly, without warning, a sharp cramp hit me in my leg. The pain shot through my calf and I couldn't keep going. I tried to maintain my balance, but the discomfort made everything more difficult. In those few moments, I felt myself slipping under the water. At first, I thought I could manage it, but as the cramp worsened, I realized that I was losing control. The water, which had once felt like a soothing escape, now seemed like a barrier, pulling me down. Panic started to rise in my chest as the pain from the cramp intensified. I couldn't move properly, and I began to feel like I was sinking. How could this happen? I thought, my heart pounding with fear. I wasn't sure if I could get myself out of this, if I could even stay afloat. I had never felt this helpless before. Then, suddenly, there was a hand. Sophie. Liam's voice cut through the panic in my head, and I looked up to see him rushing toward me. Without thinking, he reached out to me. My body felt weak, but his strong hand grabbed mine and pulled me toward the surface. He didn't hesitate. He just acted. Are you okay? Liam asked, his voice filled with concern as he steadied me in the water. His touch was firm, reassuring, and it felt safe, something I hadn't realized I needed. I met his gaze, and for a moment, the pain from my leg faded. My heart was still racing, but the fear was slowly ebbing away, replaced by an odd sense of comfort that came from his presence. I hadn't expected to feel this way. He wasn't just helping me. He was offering something more, something I hadn't realized I was missing. I tried to gather myself, nodding weakly. I'm fine, I managed to say, though I was still shaking a little. Liam's hands remained steady on my arms as he helped me find my footing again. His eyes were still on me, his face calm, but there was something in the way he looked at me, a concern, a kind of protectiveness, that made my chest tighten. I could tell he cared, and in that moment, I felt something shift inside me. I was steady again, but the tension didn't fully leave. Not because of the pain in my leg, but because of something else. The way Liam was holding me, the way he was there for me in that moment, made me realize something. I hadn't felt this much attention, this much care, in a long time. It wasn't just his touch, it was the way he looked at me, the way he wasn't just helping me get through the moment, but making sure I was okay. Then, as I stood up a bit more, trying to regain my balance, my body slipped again, and before I could react, I was falling into him. It was an accident, a slip, but it happened so quickly. We both stumbled in the water, and in that moment of chaos, I unintentionally found myself pressed against him. His arms instinctively wrapped around me to steady us both. The world seemed to pause for a moment. His body felt warm against mine, and in the split second that followed, something unexpected happened. As we struggled to regain balance, our faces were so close, and before either of us could react, our lips brushed together in an accidental kiss. It wasn't deliberate, but in that brief moment, it felt like everything around us stopped. The shock of it hit me first, the sheer surprise of the situation, and then I pulled back quickly. But not without a lingering sense of confusion and something more, something I couldn't quite define. I looked into Liam's eyes, my heart racing even faster now. He was just as startled as I was. His face flushed with surprise. I could feel the heat in my own cheeks, and the air around us felt charged with something new, something unspoken. I'm so sorry, I stammered, trying to regain my composure. I didn't mean. Liam cut me off with a soft chuckle, though it was a nervous one. It's okay, he said, his voice slightly shaking, but with a hint of reassurance. I wasn't expecting that either. We both stood there for a moment, in the quiet space between us. I could feel the tension in the air, an unspoken understanding that we had both crossed a line. Albeit unintentionally. My heart was still beating rapidly in my chest, but there was something about Liam's calmness that made me feel okay. He smiled softly, still holding onto my arms, and gave me a gentle nudge to make sure I was steady. Are you sure you're all right? I nodded, trying to steady my breathing. Yeah, I'm fine now. Thank you for everything. He smiled again, this time more comfortably, though there was a certain quiet understanding between us. Anytime. Just take it easy for a bit. As he let go of my arms and stepped back, I couldn't help but feel a shift in myself. What had just happened? The kiss was an accident, yes, but it felt like something more. It wasn't just the physical connection, it was the emotional one that had taken me by surprise. For the first time in a long time, I felt something more than just loneliness. I felt seen. As Liam walked away, I stood there, still processing the moment. I hadn't expected any of it, but I also couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed between us. Whether it was temporary or something deeper, I wasn't sure. But I knew one thing. That moment, though unexpected, had left a mark on me that I couldn't easily forget. All day long, I felt like I was riding on a wave, unable to control my emotions. The conflicting feelings inside me kept rising. My relationship with Liam, though new, had started making me feel things I hadn't realized I had neglected for so long. He understood me in ways no one else could. Every conversation we had made me feel like I was rediscovering parts of myself I had forgotten. But those feelings were also confusing. I didn't know if they were just a substitute for the emotional emptiness in my marriage. Meanwhile, my husband was still at home, a part of my life I had been committed to for years, even though, at times, it felt more like a routine, no longer filled with the same depth of emotion as before. That evening, after finishing our gym session, Liam and I sat together at the familiar cafe nearby. The atmosphere between us had shifted slightly. It was no longer just casual conversation. We were sitting closer, and I could feel a change in the way Liam looked at me. He stared at me intensely, as though he was searching for something in my eyes. Sophie, Liam said, his voice soft but with a hint of nervousness. I can't stop thinking about you. What we've shared. I really feel like there's a real connection between us." I looked into his eyes, and a pang of emotion stirred in my chest. Liam's words made me feel like I could lean on him, but I felt conflicted. Was I ready to open myself up to this again? Could I allow myself to dive deeper into these emotions? Before I could respond, Liam leaned in slightly toward me, as though he wanted to make the moment more intimate. I could feel his breath brushing against my skin. His lips parted, as if he was about to say something more significant. The tension in the air was palpable, but just then, my phone suddenly rang. I quickly grabbed my phone, the anxiety building up when I saw my husband's name on the screen. In that moment, my heart clenched. It wasn't because I feared he would find out about my feelings for Liam, but because I realized that perhaps I was getting lost in emotions for someone else while still having a responsibility at home. "I'm sorry," I said to Liam before answering the call. "It's my husband." Liam stepped back a little, and I noticed a fleeting look of regret in his eyes, but he didn't say anything further. He simply nodded in understanding. I answered the phone, and immediately, a stranger's voice came through the receiver. "Hello, this is a nurse from St. Mary's Hospital. We've just received your husband. He's been in a car accident and is currently in stable condition. However, we need you to come in for further checks." The words hit me like a shock. My whole body stiffened, and it felt like everything around me faded. An accident? My husband? Anxiety and worry flooded over me, leaving me unable to think clearly. Liam stood up, looking at me with concern. "Sophie, if you need to go right now, I won't hold you back. Go." The turmoil inside me was indescribable. I nodded, quickly standing up and grabbing my things. I called my husband back, but only received confirmation from the nurse that he was okay and stable. A weight was lifted when I knew he wasn't in immediate danger, but my mind was still racing, unable to shake the questions. When I arrived at the hospital, I saw my husband sitting on the hospital bed, still a little dazed but otherwise fine. He looked at me calmly. "Sophie, you didn't need to worry," he said. "It was just a minor collision." At that moment, I felt a strange sense of relief, but at the same time, an emptiness crept in. I sat beside him, holding his hand and feeling the warmth of his touch. But my mind kept drifting back to what had happened with Liam. The way he looked at me, the way I felt close to him, everything came rushing back. And in that instant, I realized I had been too focused on emotions I wasn't fully clear about. After everything was sorted out and I knew my husband was fine, I stepped out of the room for a moment to clear my head. I walked alone down the hospital corridor, my mind spinning with all the conflicting emotions I hadn't fully addressed. Was I just substituting my feelings for Liam because of the emptiness in my marriage? Or was there something more to what I was feeling? And when I returned to Liam, I realized that what I was searching for wasn't a rushed relationship. I needed to have a deeper understanding of myself. I needed time to truly figure out what I wanted and didn't want. And most importantly, I had to be clear with myself. When I met Liam again, I understood that I needed to clear up these emotions before I could go any further. With Liam, I didn't feel pressured. I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. He was simply there, as a friend, a companion, ready to listen and share. But I had to be sure that what I was looking for in this relationship was truly what I needed, and whether it was the right path for me.
Today's story concludes with an important turning point in Sophie's journey of self-awareness. After unexpected events and inner turmoil, she awakens to the realization that sometimes we must face our true emotions to better understand our life choices. It's a valuable lesson about being honest with ourselves and finding true happiness, not through compromise or wrong relationships, but through freedom in decision-making and action. What are your thoughts on the decisions Sophie made? How did you feel when faced with crossroads in life? Feel free to leave your comments and reflections below the video. I'd love to hear your insights. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next intriguing story, where we'll continue exploring valuable life lessons, challenging situations, and the complex relationships that shape our lives. See you in the next video.